Come on and talk, and welcome to the Tropes. Come on and talk if you want a tropes. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Get on the talking tropes. Hi, I'm David.
I'm Hannah, and I regret everything.
You
We're
want to
talking
record a different
about.
opening?
No, I love it. It's the worst, and I love every part of it. Um, we're talking about Space Jam today,
Yeah,
which is
we're talking
also
about
the
Space
worst.
Jam in a wider context. We're trying to step
Yes.
sort of into the serververse, if you will,
Oh
and
God,
maybe
I will
explore some
not.
of the business practices, the technologies, the storytelling tropes that led to Space Jam to a new legacy, rather than simply exploring it as a work of art. So, what did you think of the Space Jams? Revisiting the 1996 film and watching this new HBO Max cross promotional object.
I I went into the new Space Jam: A New Legacy, with like low expectations. I was not expecting art. I was not expecting, to be deeply moved. I was just looking for a good time. And personally, it failed to deliver that good time for me. That's not to say it won't deliver a great time for kids, because I know that there were older people who felt similarly about the Space Jam movie that you and I grew up with in the 90s and early
Right. And were
2000s.
you entertained by that as a child? Was
Oh,
that your jam?
absolutely. It was so my jam. Both you and I had a gym teacher who would exclusively play music from the Space Jam soundtrack. Like, it is my childhood.
Pump the jam, pump it
Yeah,
up.
this song is
Yeah, it's the soundtrack is iconic, that's for sure. And it's like
absolutely.
a perfect encapsulation of the 90s in a nutshell. And I think part
Oh
of that
yeah.
comes from the fact that the 90s were so commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Apparently, the director of the film Space Jam referred to that time as the renaissance of commercials, the late 80s and 90s.
Okay.
It was a time, according to Joe Pitka, that he said it was the renaissance of commercials. People were trying to make something transcendental in commercials, and he came from documentary, and he wanted to put the truthfulness of documentary into commercials. And he worked with lots of people in the NBA. He worked with Michael
Yeah.
Jackson. He worked with the Beatles. He worked with Yoko Ono. A lot of celebrities. He was a very prolific commercial director, and his big hit, you might say, of commercials was a little known commercial about Bugs Bunny, Michael Jordan wearing Nikes, playing some basketball against Marvin the Martian. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the impetus for Space Jam.
Yep. There you
But
go.
also the fact that Michael Jordan was trying to, expand his brand, and Warner
Of
Brothers was
course.
looking to compete with Disney and create some properties that were marketable out of their old IP. So
Right.
it was always a corporate product. It's not new
Oh
for
yeah.
a new
No.
legacy. It's a new
No, no, no,
legacy
no.
of old IP.
Right. But I think what is savvy about Space Jam, the original,
Yeah,
versus A New Legacy, is the fact that, you know, the people making it knew that Michael Jordan is not a particularly strong actor, and so they wrote a script around that.
right.
Whereas, the people making A New Legacy did not really seem to grasp that, like,
Yeah, they were
LeBron
writing essentially like a
can't
typical
act.
Hollywood screenplay, which is
Yeah.
not what fits the Space Jam brand. I mean, Space
No.
Jam 1 is anything but a typical screenplay. It's,
No.
20 minutes of this and then a little sidetrack to that. And now we got to catch up with all the players who lost their talent and do a little
Mhm.
montage of them sucking at basketball. And then we're gonna go
Right.
get Michael's shorts, and
Right.
wrestle them away from a dog, like
It's set
no
pieces
focus.
to showcase the Looney Tunes,
And the
that's
animation, and to
right.
showcase the technical aspects that they were really proud of and that kids really respond to because they like to see human cartoon interaction
For
since the
sure.
dawn of animation, as so many reviews of these films have said.
Right.
Like almost every review that I've seen, and all the production notes of the original Space Jam, all were like, if you go back to Gertie the dinosaur back in 1920, humans and animated characters have always interacted. Yeah, but really, when you think of like cartoons in a human world, what's the first movie that you think of?
I mean, Roger Rabbit, of
Right,
course.
exactly. That was like the big step. It was this Amblin Disney co-production, part of their
Yeah.
new Touchstone Pictures brand. Um, and they were, trying to make like a serious, almost adult kind of
It's very adult.
animated feature, and it
Yeah.
was based on this like comedic satirical noir book about like racism and redlining, but in the context of cartoon characters.
Right.
um and they were also talking about unions and all this other stuff and labor and blah 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 policing. And that's what Who Framed Roger Rabbit was about. But it was also about just the technological advances that had led to the ability to use traditional animation and traditional filmmaking to combine these two mediums together. So what they would do is they would shoot the whole scene, and anything that the cartoon characters would interact with, like if they pick up a plate in the human world, they had to build like a little rig, some kind of like robot or wire or puppet to do
Right.
that lifting. And then they would animate over it, and they would literally paint
On the
animation
film
cells like
cells.
they would
Yeah.
for any Disney movie before that, and then layer them, and then they would photograph it with a camera. So I think it's interesting to think of the difference between that and then 1996, when it's laser printing of these
Hmm.
film strips, still film, still not digital,
Right.
but everything that's being put on the film is composited in a computer. All of the coloring is done digitally, so it can be adjusted and whatever, and everything exists within a three-dimensional world that's created by this green screen technology of the 90s, which was very
Hmm.
popular. So
Oh yeah.
we've moved from filming a real space and putting animation on top of it to filming a real person in a digital space and placing them digitally into it and then compositing
Hmm.
it. But it's still like real animation cells, it's still real, whatever, but
Hand
you're
drawn.
you're lasering it in.
Right.
And then moving to today, where it's full digital compositing,
Yeah.
full digital filmmaking, and there's absolutely
I
no
mean, the
analog in that
majority
process.
the majority of this film was for sure filmed in a green screen basement
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah. I mean
Like
that continues from 96, but what's missing is all of the, traditional animation is now done in the computer. It's not hand drawn,
hmm.
which it was back in the
Right.
90s, even though the coloring was done digitally.
Hmm.
It was still drawn with pencil and paper in some way, shape, or form. And then now it is not at all. It's fully just like Toon Boom or whatever animation technology that they're using.
Right.
And I think that the limitations, my argument is basically that the limitations of the previous technologies sort of dictated what they wanted to do, right?
Mm.
The existence of, you know, these like gremlin style like rigs to move all of the things that the animated characters would move made it so that Who Framed Roger Rabbit directors and and filmmakers all wanted to have the animated characters move and affect things in the real world. That was the
Hmm.
goal. And then once we have a CGI basketball to bounce around, it's no longer about that. It's about capturing the essence of movement of a Michael Jordan and
Right.
then adding the animation on top of it
Hmm.
and placing him in a fully like animated world.
Right.
And then you get to today and it's just about there's a 2D animated world and there's a 3D animated world, and they should very rarely interact in any way, shape, or form
Yeah.
because they both look so neat and tidy and they're in their proper little boxes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that one is like worse than another, but I'm saying I think technology dictates form in this
I
case.
I think you're right. I definitely think it's interesting some of the animation choices that they made that, you know, when LeBron gets transported into the serververse and ends up in Toon World,
Right.
you know, he becomes animated and very
Right.
light-skinned, which
Okay.
was an odd bit of colorism that I just like could not get over the entire time.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't comment on that personally, but I think the fact that he's animated throughout the
Yeah.
film is that they couldn't get him for as long as they got Michael Jordan for. That's demonstrably the case because you can't film him and then animate characters around him and have the same level of control. In fact, it's possible that when producers change their mind about things and directors change their mind and directors actually get switched out for new directors,
Hmm.
um, that you need to basically be able to reanimate the entire serververse segment without reshoots, as it were.
Right.
And so that could be part of the reason that there is no LeBron as a person interacting with the cartoon people. There's
Well,
very little of it, at least.
there is, but you're right. It's very
Minimal.
minimal.
There was
Yeah.
I think I counted about, two or three shots actually. It was the Mad
When
Max
they're,
segment,
hmm
the Matrix segment,
hmm
and there was a brief segment where they all turn back into cartoon characters after Algae Rhythm is defeated.
yes. And I mean, I would sort of count the, you know, when Bugs and everyone is 3D animated, like,
Right, but what I'm saying is that's a whole different pipeline, you know,
mm,
because what was really astounding about the original Space Jam was that they were doing CGI, traditional animation, and live action all in the
all
same
at
shot
once.
for most of the movie, for like about an hour and change of the movie. And then the rest
Hmm.
is like, just like weird shots of just him hanging out with his family, or weird animation segments where it's just the tunes and the nerd lux,
Hmm.
and those suck. And the only thing that's good, and you can agree with me or not, but it's true. The only thing that's good is
Okay.
Michael Jordan with the Looney Tunes interacting with each other in creative and interesting ways. That's all there is. That's all there is.
I mean, I do disagree, but I respect the point. You know,
Well,
I
what
know
what was your
for a
favorite part
fact.
of the fully animated or fully live action segments?
Um, I liked a lot of just like the character interactions that we got from the Looney Tunes in like, you know, just even early stuff when the Monstars first get there, like Bugs Bunny just kind of like messing with them. You
I
know,
guess it's
I
so
find it
it's just feels
entertaining.
like it's lesser than any given Looney Tune short. It has nothing like new to
Sure.
offer, right? I mean,
Sure.
yeah, you're seeing all the Looney Tunes interact with each other, which I guess is kind of unique. If you don't count like the Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck movies, or whatever,
Some of
or
the
the Roadrunner
shows.
movie. Um, but the thing that's new, the thing that Space Jam offers that nothing else can, I think, is Michael Jordan just like picking up Tweety Bird
Yeah,
unconscious off the ground, or getting kissed by Bugs
by
Bunny, and
Bugs
then you see
Bunny.
his lips CGI stretch when the
Yeah.
lips disconnect. And that's something that you couldn't do in the Roger Rabbit era. It was new. They were
Right.
pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that's sort of getting everyone's goat is that Space Jam: A New Legacy pushes absolutely zero boundaries, technical, narrative, or otherwise.
I think
Um,
you're totally right there. I
right.
think you hit the nail on the head.
Like if Space Jam 1 came out today, I don't
Hmm.
think that it would have the same impact. Or maybe it would because it's been so long since we've had something like that. But
Hmm.
just the fact that the fact that it was like the first time you could ever see a horrifying monstrosity like Michael Jordan being crushed into a ball and then slam dunked, or seeing his arm stretch from half
Right.
court to
Yeah.
score the winning point. Like
Yeah.
that had impact, not just because it was like the narrative culmination of Jordan in a Toon world, but
Hmm.
because no one had seen something like that in a movie ever.
Right.
And then the new like ending of like the last point of a New Legacy, where he, like, I don't know, somebody throws him a jump pad in a video
Yeah.
game and he does an extra jump and then gets posterized.
Yeah.
uh no, that's nothing. You've done nothing.
Yeah. It's not narratively fulfilling at
Right.
all. It's not technologically interesting. Yeah, I think the conclusion that you sort of, I don't know about conclusion, but
Right. Well, it's, yeah,
I
it's a premise,
I
I
think
guess.
the premise that you've stumbled upon
Right.
is cogent at the
Right.
very least.
Now, I have a little quote here from a supervising animator from the original Space Jam,
Okay.
which is, they say, Roger Rabbit was the vinyl LP, and this is the compact disc.
Oh,
And I think that is so, that's an iconic line now for me
yeah.
now. Like that to me is like the stand-in for everything in terms of like what the 90s were. Because yeah, the compact disc was an amazing innovation.
Yeah.
It revolutionized music and the music
Mhm.
industry and how music was sold and how it was
Mhm.
consumed. But there are always going to be purists who like the vinyl. And once
Right.
CDs became obsolete, they look like dog shit. Or they sound like,
Right.
like bad, compared to, you can now download and stream high quality music, higher quality than on those CDs.
Right.
And you can
Absolutely.
also buy vinyl, but no one's going to go out and buy CDs
CDs.
now.
Right, right. Like CDs have become this sort of obsolete middle step, um in a way that like Space Jam kind of has as well.
Right.
But I don't think like in the same way that we're currently discussing all of the ways that streaming music, the problems with that particular mode of technology. I think we're also discussing the problems and over reliance on CGI and green screen and these sorts of techniques, in their modern movies in the same way
Right.
that we talk about our modern music.
Right. Do you remember when we did an episode on the Uncanny and we talked a lot
Yeah.
about cats? Is
Yes.
there anything
Yes.
that you find uncanny in either of these films, the Space Jam films?
Hmm. Like, there's nothing that is like disturbing,
Right.
there's nothing like disturbingly uncanny,
No.
but, in the same way that Space Jam has always been corporate, there's like an added layer of cynicism to A New
Mm,
Legacy in the fact that it's like, look at all the things that we Warner Brothers own,
mm.
in the same way that Disney is very much like, and Wreck-It Ralph, look at all the things that we Disney own,
Right. That can be
like,
uncanny. I also think the fact all of the background characters that were live action shot, they don't
mhm.
look like the actual characters. They look like people in Halloween costumes of those characters.
A little
So it's
bit,
kind of
yeah.
like I've been invited to a horrible, horrible Halloween party, the worst,
Right.
with all of
Where
these people who tried way harder than me on my costume. And I'm just sitting here, you know,
trying to
wearing
enjoy
a,
some basketball.
yeah, I'm just trying to watch basketball, and all these pardon the phrase, but all these freaks, all these droogs, and all of these Batman villains and horror
Yeah.
movie characters have stumbled in to disturb my children.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know, like some of the properties that they choose to include, like I get it. Of course, Harry Potter, like tracks, like can be enjoyed by kids.
Yeah, all
You
the Hanna
have
Barberas and all the old
DC
cartoons.
superheroes, right? all of that. You know, like makes sense. Sure, fine.
Mhm.
What what is baffling to me is the inclusions of like the Matrix and
Yeah,
like really Mad Max Fury Road. That's the
right.
one where I was just
Yeah.
like,
Well, how about this? Could you call it uncanny or unheimlich, like how Freud would have considered it, to see a film that you maybe have nostalgia for or remember fondly, like Casablanca, having Yosemite Sam instead of the Sam from the film, and they say, "Play it,
right.
Sam," and he tries to play it.
Yeah.
Or if you have nostalgia for Austin Powers, which
Mm-hmm.
you might, um, Austin Powers 2, mind you, and you see Mini Me being replaced with Elmer Fudd, and you're like, that's not quite how I remember it. It's almost like returning home and things just being a little bit off.
But I
Um,
mean, that's supposed to be the joke, you know? Like,
sure, but it's a
I
joke
don't think.
about it's a joke at the viewer's expense almost, because it's uncanny, it's strange, it's not quite right, and they feel that, and they're making fun of you for feeling that way.
I guess. To me, it's just like, you know, movies always have jokes for the adults in them, but
Of
like, are
course.
these like minuscule, like, I can't even call them homages, you know, like these just like rip-offs of like, we own Austin Powers, so here's Austin Powers. We own Mad
Right.
Max, so here's Mad Max. You know,
Right.
like there's nothing deeper to it. Like
Right.
they're just like, what do we own that we could stick a Looney
Yeah, I'm
Tunes
not saying
character
that this
to
is an
for a joke?
intentional uncanny thing, but I think there's a
No, of
little bit of
course not.
uncanniness to all of Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Well,
And
it's because
I
it's
would point to
uncomfortable.
even the scene where it's like a body horror sort of affect when the 2D characters are transformed into 3D, and everyone
Mm.
universally sort of gasps and goes like, this is wrong. This should not be. Even Bugs Bunny himself
Right.
saying it.
Yeah, which is weird.
Cockadoodle do not do this, as
That
Foghorn Leghorn says.
that was that was pretty good. I will say the one laugh the movie got for me was the Foghorn Leghorn. Oh my god, I'm forgetting what the scene was precisely. What's the
Where he
scene where
gets
they get
booted
fog?
from the game for
No,
going
no.
up to Pete and saying, this is not cogent, or is it the one where he's Khaleesi?
Yes, it's that one where
That did
he
not make me laugh at all.
that
He's like,
was the
winter, I say winter is coming.
that was the only one that got me. I did
That
laugh
one
at
to me
that.
sucked the worst out of all of them. Just complete non sequitur, because we have to promote Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
because it's
Um
the only tentpole holding up HBO as a brand. And I think the way that it's organized into like these planets, in the same way that
yeah,
HBO Max is structured into these hubs, this is a total
yeah.
tangent, but like it's
No, I
creating
love
this
it.
sense of like homogeneity to the serververse being like our experience of traversing the web, where you go to a
Right.
page and then the page has little splinters and hubs that things accumulate in, and where you kind of live for a little bit.
Hmm.
Total tangent. But anyway, I wanted to
No,
talk
I
about the
think
Uncanny a little bit more,
okay,
just a
okay.
sliver more, because I wanted to compare it to um, a theorist, Tsvetan Todorov's theory of the uncanny and the fantastic and the
Okay.
marvelous. So, in his definition, which is sort of related to Freud's uncanny, but it's distinct. In his
Okay.
mind, the uncanny is a story where the laws of the world are broken, but eventually they are restored,
Mm.
because he's referring to a literary genre, which is when you have something that is beyond our understanding, but it's eventually explained either by it was all a dream, or it was a
Magic,
trick by
science.
somebody. Scooby-Doo, there's never a real magic thing there. You take the mask off and then you reveal it was all a person the whole time.
Oh,
That's the
I see.
uncanny.
Okay.
But in
Okay.
his mind, the fantastic is when you can't tell for the story whether it is one way or the other, whether it was
Okay.
real or just an illusion, a mirage. And then
Hmm.
the marvelous is when it's revealed that the the magic or the
It's
expanded
true.
reality is true, and that it's all beyond our understanding, supernatural, whatever.
Hmm.
And I think that the first Space Jam, you still follow me here?
I'm following you
I
totally.
think the first Space Jam is the marvelous,
Absolutely
and the
agree.
new Space Jam is the uncanny, where it's all given a scientific explanation and it's all revealed to be part of this simulation that doesn't
Yeah,
break the laws of physics and doesn't shatter the illusions of reality, and
right.
everyone returns to the real world as if everything's okay.
Hmm.
Now then it becomes the fantastic at the very last scene when Bugs Bunny enters the real world,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't all a simulation. It maybe was real, but maybe isn't. Maybe, in fact, they're still in the simulation right now.
Oh God.
No, it's
It's
it's it's there. It's there. It's in the text. It really is.
I mean, it's like you can certainly make that argument, but I think it's like an argument that is left there not on purpose, but by lazy filmmaking, you
Maybe
know?
or maybe not. But what I'm saying is the change in genres here, I think, is really important to how enjoyable it is, because Space Jam 1 has no pretext.
Right.
The Looney Tunes live at the center of the earth because they do in our hearts.
Yeah.
And there's space aliens because they exist in our hearts. And in
Yeah.
this, it's not that they exist. It's not that anyone in the world would acknowledge that they exist if they saw them. It's just that they are within a server that contains an algorithm that has the power to simulate our dreams and wants and desires. It's all
Hmm.
explained in a very Star Trekky, very holodeck kind of way.
Right. Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
Sucks ass.
It's boring. No one wants that. That's not what the
Um,
Looney Tunes are. They are marvelous. Like that's the whole
yeah,
point of them, you
right.
know?
So that's my main point.
I want to go back to the point you were making earlier when we were still in the uncanny, um, about the conception of the serververse, and
Yeah,
how it mirrors our actual online
right,
consumption and lives in certain
right,
ways, and the way that the corporate internet kind of functions,
right,
where it's kind of like, oh, you're all in this neck of the woods and you will stay there. That's the
right.
goal, is to keep
Well, of
you in
course,
the
this wasn't even the
serververse.
first Warner Brothers property to do this. We just
Hmm.
forget because the Lego movie was actually good. But the Lego movie is precisely this. It is
Yeah.
the world of our imagination is owned by a company, and the company can subdivide into different worlds, or they can allow the crossovers to happen. But we don't
Hmm.
have control over it in the real world. They control our imaginations because they own the properties that make up our collective imagination, and that's what play is. So that's the
Hmm.
Lego movie.
Yeah.
In this one, even the concept of the movie existing in the first place is a product of an algorithm.
Right.
And it's trying to be self-aware and saying, like, look, we're acknowledging it, we know it's like it's a remake, it's a reboot, whatever. Doesn't work anymore because we
No.
see the that it's true.
Yeah.
It's not a joke.
Yeah. It doesn't work anymore. One, because it's just too true.
Right.
But also I think we are so saturated in meta content,
Sure.
like the mid 2000s, where it's just everyone pivoting to meta really hard, and
Right. I
like
think we
that's
still
where we
like
are.
meta. We still like as a
Yes.
culture, we like Rick and Morty.
Yes.
We just don't like Rick
I
and Morty appearing to say, hello, this is our corporate cameo. Please refrain from referring to any of the actual content of our show because it is offensive to children,
right.
uh, and bad for children. Um, I don't think children should watch Rick and Morty, but they can do whatever they want. Sorry, I was just saying, like, that the meta people aren't just
Yes.
oversaturated with meta, but they just don't like that meta is being used as an excuse for corporacy,
For sure.
corporatology, corporateness.
The corporate infusion
Yeah.
of all of our media. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Like, I think people still, and people always have, and people always will enjoy content that has, some level of self-awareness. But
Right,
at this point, everyone's sick of corporate Twitters, because it's like,
right,
we get it, you're a corporate Twitter.
right.
Like,
But
it's not
Space
fooling us
Jam 1 did
anymore.
this, and Looney Tunes Back in Action did this as well. The
Mm.
Looney Tunes have been famous for self-referentially talking about the Warner Brothers, their media empire, the
Right.
corporate stooges in charge. But at least like with Looney Tunes Back in Action, the corporate, people are portrayed as like the bad guys, the dumbasses, the stooges, and
Right.
they're really humorously portrayed. Whereas in this one, it's like Sarah Silverman and Steven Yeun, like
They're just like
they're I
yes
guess like
men.
incompetent, but they're not like villains.
No, they're just like doofy, but like they're
They're just
so
sort of
boring.
hapless at the will of the algorithm, which was created by like no one. You
Yeah.
know, isn't that kind of spooky?
Yeah.
That the algorithm in this, it doesn't have a creator. Normally, like in a story of like a rogue AI, there's an idealistic inventor, a mad
Yeah.
scientist, or something,
Hmm.
um, a father figure for the
I mean,
AI.
I think the AI in this is like, in execution, a horrible and boring, and I don't care about him at all villain, but like, ideally is a very interesting and possibly compelling like
Do you have a
villain.
fix? Are you gonna writer doctor it?
I don't know that I necessarily have like a fix, but you know, this idea, I think it's a common theme, at least in sci-fi literature, that I've read, of AI developing its own personality, and you know becoming sentient kind of on its own, and and it's certainly a theme that other sci-fi movies have explored as well, but like, this suddenly going evil and rogue, like, it's so petty here,
Mm-mm.
like,
Right.
and we're
I
not
think
sure
if
what
I
his
were
initial
to put on
goal
my
is.
script doctoring glasses, which I don't
Yeah.
have because I've never done that, but um, I would give him a daddy. He needs a dad, a creator of some kind, because he's obsessed with the relationship between LeBron and his son.
Yeah.
He wants to destroy it. He wants to
I mean,
release
it's
what he sees as a creator from his creator. And then he has no, like, he sees himself as a creative being, but he doesn't
right.
have a creator to rebel against.
Yeah.
So he's just
Yeah.
rebelling against like mild criticism.
Yeah. It's true.
And like, I would like to see him reformed. It's a kids movie. At the end
Right.
of Space Jam 1, yes, the corporate asshole Swackhammer gets destroyed, but the little nerd lucks, they
Yeah.
realize that they can throw off the shackles of oppression
Yeah.
and take the capital from the capitalist, which
Yeah.
is good, and then become nice. um but why can't Don Cheadle have a papa? Papa, can you hear me? And why can't he, you know, reconnect with that creator and realize that he doesn't have to steal everyone in the world for attention because he can
Mm-hmm.
have the love of his father, just like Dom can have the love of LeBron. Why not? That
I
would be
like
my
this
my
fix.
script doctoring.
It's a
But
much better fix. I like
yeah,
it.
but I can't really say that with confidence because what I know for a fact is tons of producers and screenwriters were called in to do exactly that and fix this script, and it came out like this. So I mean, it's a too many cooks in the kitchen scenario, or it's
Yeah.
a too much corporateness scenario, or it's just like a bad script written to be stupid and consumable and easy.
Yeah. I I don't even know. It's just so bizarre, and the acting is so poor on just like everyone's part. Like, Don Cheadle phoned this in so hard.
He did
I
that,
don't
yeah.
I don't blame him, but like, Jesus Christ, did he just get his paycheck and go home, you know?
Yeah. So I know we've been talking a lot this year about HBO Max as a branding like project, and Disney Plus, honestly. But this has
Yeah.
been the year of the streaming, of the streaming site exploding, and the cross promotional streaming, branding, marketing, whatever, because of COVID, and
Right.
because people need to compete with Netflix,
Hmm.
and in order for their companies to work. Um, but I know we've talked about that a lot, but I want to talk about the ways that Space Jam: A New Legacy works or doesn't work to promote HBO Max as a platform for families, for kids, and what strategies they've been using. So,
Hmm.
would you subscribe to HBO Max to show Space Jam: A New Legacy to your kids?
No.
No, but I think some people would. I think there was a lot of people who streamed it in the US alone. Opening weekend, 2.1 million
It's a
US
lot.
households streamed Space Jam: A New Legacy. And that's in addition to a lot of people going to theaters to see it. It
Here's the
was the
thing though.
highest grossing WB animated movie.
I think that, if we're gonna sort of compare streaming services and why people subscribe, you subscribe to Disney Plus for
Right.
your kids,
For the
and then there's
legacy stuff.
right there, and for the legacy stuff and even the new stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, but like, that is for your kids. And if you get
Right.
some enjoyment out of it for like maybe the Marvel or whatever, great. Um, you subscribe to HBO for you. And then this is like, oh, a nice treat that I can show
Mm.
my kids.
But is that what they want? Or do they want, Sesame Workshop to be a reason you subscribe? Cartoon Network is on HBO Max now. And are they
Right.
trying to say basically that Cartoon Network, Space Jam, they are one and the same? My evidence for this, you may know what I'm about to say, is Teen Titans Go See Space Jam, which is a
Mm.
crossover film between Teen Titans Go, the sort of chibi versions of the Teen Titans cartoon from the early 2000s, which crosses over with the 1996 Space Jam. It premiered on June 20th, 2021, so about a month before this dropped. And it was just like a riff tracks of like 45 minutes to an hour of Space Jam, with them fast forwarding through the boring bits to get to the fun bits, and then with little speech bubbles of the Teen Titans characters giving little commentary. So like Cyborg gave fun facts because his role was that Space Jam was his favorite movie and the best sports movie of all time. And then Beast
And this
Boy,
is the original Space Jam that they watch.
yes, the original Space
Okay.
Jam. So in this special, like the Nerd Lux arrive and start making friends with the Teen Titans,
Mm.
and they're like hanging out in the
So
Titans Tower.
maybe that's what they're trying to get you to do. They're trying to get you to subscribe to HBO so that you see like HBO, or so that you can show your kids Space Jam that you're nostalgic for. And then,
Right.
oh, look, a new legacy is there. Yeah, let's watch the new Space Jam movie together.
I
Like
think there's an element of that for sure. And I think there's also an element of just saying, well, Looney Tunes for kids, Space Jam for kids, Cartoon Network for kids,
kids.
Sesame Street for kids. Like they have kids properties and are trying to corner that
Sure.
market as well as like a prestige for kids thing, maybe even. Um, as
Maybe.
opposed to maybe the Coco Melons of Netflix or something.
God, the Coco Melons of Netflix.
um,
Scourge upon our souls.
Right.
It's
Or
funny.
it's just another way that they've discovered to mine old IP for and milk them for as much as they're possibly worth. Teen Titans Go, very popular show. Let's just, instead of writing an episode, market it as a movie. And it's just
Hmm.
a recut of a movie we've already made with like 20 seconds of extra footage that we had to animate very cheaply.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like Teen Titans Go has been a very lucrative property for them. They made a theatrical movie, a straight to TV and DVD movie, and this is like their third movie apparently.
Yeah.
Weird.
Can't
Anything
believe
else
you
on
made
like
me
the
think.
marketing and brand integration in this product, if
I
you could even call
mean,
it a film?
like, I mean, the first Space Jam is obviously so saturated with product placement and,
Right.
nods to all the
Nike,
commercials and product placements
McDonald's.
that Michael Jordan was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and there's definitely some of that here, but I feel like there's a lot less of it, and it's more focused on the Warner Brothers properties as a
Right.
whole
I
than
think it's
like
also like
shilling
weird,
for
like
Pringles or whatever.
it's almost like more bizarre to see like just like like it's more of exciting to see space cross, or I guess to see the NBA crossing over with the Looney Tunes, because it's like you can't even imagine those two properties going together. Whereas
Right.
then once you start integrating like everything in the Warner Brothers like archive, it almost just becomes like a hodgepodge, and it's like the fact that
Yeah.
the Looney Tunes are there isn't even that exciting anymore
No, it's not. It's
because
this
everyone's there.
movie,
It's like Ready
this
Player One. It's like Legos. It's like, any of these cross promotional things. Like Lego
right.
Batman has this scene where all the villains from Warner Brothers come out. It's like the Gremlins and the Daleks and the Voldemort and
Uh-huh.
other things, and they just like all come out. It's like we've released all the villains from the Warner Brothers, and
Yeah.
and they don't say Warner Brothers, but like it's obvious that it's just stuff that they had the rights to.
Right.
Um, so it's like it's weird, and then it happens here too. And all of the characters that they have rush in, King Kong, and you know all of the
Pennywise and Mr.
Pennywise.
Smith and
Yeah.
the what are the villains called in Mad Max? The Wild
I
Boys
don't
or
know. The
whatever.
Silvermen. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, no, it I think you're right in that it makes the inclusion of the Looney Tunes themselves less special and less
Right.
noticeable. And I think it's also interesting, just like from a story perspective, how in the original, it's like the Looney Tunes go out and um
Michael.
seek Michael Jordan's help. In this one, LeBron gets sucked in and like forms like kind of a alliance of
Necessity.
convenience and
Convenience.
necessity with Bugs Bunny,
Right. Because
who just
Bugs
kind
Bunny
of
wants to
uses
reunite the
him.
gang and he wants to reunite his family. And so there's a thematic connection, but it's vague. I think
It's
like it's
vague.
interesting how hard the original Space Jam worked to make its premise feel a little more plausible, which didn't
Yeah.
work. But like it worked really hard at it. It was like, well, why do they need to get Michael Jordan? Well, the other basketball players of the time had their talent stolen. And the only one they didn't
Mm-hmm.
steal was Michael because he was a
He was a
baseball player at the
player.
time
Mm-hmm.
and not in the NBA. So
Mm-hmm.
they explain that away. And why does he, need to play basketball? Well, because these guys were short. And so they thought basketball as opposed to another game. Now, in this one, they work backwards. So they don't have to explain the basketball because it's LeBron.
Right.
And they explain LeBron going in by he's just a very popular social media figure. It could have been
Yeah.
anyone. It could have been, it could have been Beyonce in a singing competition, but
Right.
it wasn't.
It was LeBron
It
because
was
he had a
LeBron, so it's
son.
basketball.
Right.
And it's
Right.
Dom
And
ball
then
because that's his game.
right. It also it's so interesting how much this movie like just like cribs off of Hook,
Okay.
Like
I
it's
explain. I've never
so.
seen Hook.
Oh, you've never seen Hook?
Please
What?
just stop. Just tell me why it's Hook.
Okay, so the whole thing about Hook is that Captain Hook basically kidnaps Robin Williams' children, and Robin
Right.
Williams is Peter Pan,
Yes.
and he's like, "Oh, what I'm gonna do is make your son love me," and like that's
Yes. Oh
exactly
my
what
god, that was what
algorithm
I was thinking
does.
of. I couldn't think of like where does this trope come from that
It's
like
Hook.
make him hate his dad because of the way his dad treated me. Yes, it's Hook. That's right. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So it
This
it
movie
was
is
like
Hook.
it's basically Hook with Warner Brothers characters. It's so weird and just like, but even the hookishness of it is like so stretched so thin. Like the father son tension is like barely there,
Right.
you
That's why I
know?
said you need the daddy for Cheadle. You need
Right.
Cheadle's dad or his
You need
creator.
Al's papa.
Any words about Lola Bunny? Lola
I
Bunny?
don't know. She's fine. She's
She's fine in
whatever.
both.
She's fine. I enjoy
She
her
was,
voice
I think it's
actress
interesting
more in
looking
the
at like
first
quotes
one.
from the producer or the director being like, Lola Bunny in Space Jam 1, she is a modern woman of the 90s. She's empowered and strong. And like it goes back to our strong female character episode from
Right.
years back. Just
Right.
like in the 90s, what strong female character meant was you're hot, but you know it.
You're hot, you know it. You got the skills because she does have the
Right.
skills, you
You
know.
always have to have the skills, you perform, but you don't have any character outside of being hot and having the skills.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I
And
guess
that's,
she cares about bugs. She likes bugs,
I
but for
guess.
what reason, I do not know.
But also you don't get like getting called names, you know. You can't be
Right. Don't call
called
me
doll
babe. Don't call
face.
me doll. Don't call me whatever. So
Yeah.
that's the 90s. What is an empowered and modern woman today?
She
Wonder
does a bunch
Woman's.
of wonders stuff, and
Wonder
then
Woman's around
it's
and
Wonder Woman's,
is a
and
warrior of a type.
but she's got a good heart, and so she'll
Right.
fail a test to save her friends.
She gives an inspirational speech at one point.
Yes.
She
She's
still
got the
has the
skills.
skills, has not gained any character traits or humor, but continues to do those things without being a sex symbol necessarily.
Yes.
I mean, she could still be for
Yes.
somebody, but
I don't know. Everyone's like, "Oh, Lola's boobs are gone," and it's like, "Yeah, they're
she's just wearing a
fine.
different
They're
outfit
right.
mainly.
They're there. She's still got curves.
She just
You
is wearing
perverts.
different clothes.
You furries."
Furries don't even like it when she wears clothes. What do you care? Anyway.
Yeah, we really have not talked enough about what the Looney Tunes and Space Jam in general has done for the furry community.
Right. Yeah, we can
Which
have another
is
episode
not a
about that. We did
lot.
that whole thing with Disney,
We did.
I think we have
I
it
think
covered.
we've covered. Yeah.
um last thing I really want to talk about is what is the genre? What is genre, first of all?
A
We
loose
can return
collection of
to
tropes
we can
and
return to
whatnot.
Todorov for this a little bit,
Okay. We're
where
going back to
in
Todorov.
theorizing the fantastic, he talked a lot about how do we define a genre? Can we know a genre without reading every example of a genre? Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we use inductive reasoning. It doesn't work in science, but it works here. Can we, define a genre with strict parameters? Not always. It's a series of connections and whatnot. But it has a fundamental makeup, is sort of what he said, that there
Mm-hmm.
are things that you cannot change without it breaking genre in
Sure.
that way.
Yeah.
So what is the genre of Space Jam, the original, using whatever evidence you would like to pull?
Ooh. This is a tough one.
Right. Is it
And
a sports movie
mm,
in the style
mm,
of the Mighty Ducks, Major League, um,
a league of
others,
their
League of
own.
Their Own?
Uh,
Is
the
it
not
a sports movie?
yes and no. Like it's
Okay,
so much more meandering than your
average
average
sports
sports
movie. It
movie.
doesn't follow the genre tropes as much as you would
I
expect it
would
to.
I would certainly call it a comedy. I think we can
It's a
safely place it in
comedy,
the comedy genre.
of course, but also it's not exactly like one character's journey. It's not like a
Sure.
Hollywood comedy necessarily. It's a comedy of errors. It's a comedy
Hmm.
of gags and just sort of things happening. And
Yeah.
in order to understand the gags, it requires you to suspend your disbelief about so many laws of physics and things. The people in Toon World can stretch and
Hmm.
expand.
Right.
They're stretchy. Is it like a Bill Murray style comedy, which is where the writers and the producers come from? They both come from Bill Murray comedies like Stripes and Ghostbusters and
Hmm.
Meatballs.
Hmm. And
Is it in that
Beethoven.
genre? What?
And Beethoven.
Yes, well, one of the writers, I believe.
Um, uh, is it that genre? No, like I
But they
wouldn't
think it
necessarily,
is. But
but
they
they
think
think it
the
is.
intention, not that intention matters, but according to Ivan Reitman, when asked what this movie is like, what genre it is, he said the movie
Uh-huh.
this is most like is Ghostbusters because of its mix of genres. A, it's a comedy, and it's a big adventure film, and there are parts that are kind of scary. So Ivan Reitman, this producer, he's coming in with this notion that like we're trying to recreate the magic that is Ghostbusters, which is of course sci-fi, supernatural, comedy, action, and also just like, you know, like there's a little bit of romance in there, but not really. It's a focus on
Mm,
just like these core like ridiculous genres. The
mm-hmm.
I guess you could call it the uncanny or the fantastic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he's trying to put that with this, which is not sci-fi in the way that Ghostbusters is. It's sci-fi in the way that like Jimmy Neutron is, where yeah, aliens just come down and they're like, "Hey, we're aliens." That doesn't, you know, shatter anyone's understanding of where they are in the universe.
Right. It's
It's
just like,
just
okay,
that
there's
they're there.
aliens.
Right.
Yeah.
Just as bizarre, there are Looney Tunes in the center of the earth. That's not sci-fi. That's maybe fantasy, maybe comedy, maybe just childlike cartoonness. I don't
Right. It's
know.
fantastical,
Right.
but it's not what one would describe as, if someone was like, I want to see a fantasy movie, that
Right.
would not
But
be
it is a
what they're
comedy,
looking
and
for.
it is a sports. It is a movie with sports, a sports
Yes.
movie.
And
It
it
is a
definitely
blending of
follows,
genres.
for sure it's a blending of genre. It definitely follows some of the sports arcs as far as highs and lows
Right.
and that
And in
sort of thing
terms of
goes.
a genre of comedy, Reitman believes that Bugs Bunny is like a combination of Groucho Marx and Bill Murray. So if anyone was wondering why is Bill Murray in this movie, which I wondered for many, many years because I saw the film and I was like, I don't even really know who Bill Murray is because I am 10 or whatever.
Young.
I'm young. Why is he here? Why is he friends with Michael Jordan? Are they friends in
Yeah.
real life? The answer is no. One of the producers just dropped him off, is the only explanation that we get for how he gets underground. And that is
Yep.
literally true. The producers know him, they've worked with him, they've written with him, the writers, and they see this movie as a Bill Murray comedy slash genre blend in the style of Ghostbusters. Now, to move on to Space Jam: A New Legacy for a moment,
Yeah, let's do it.
that is not Ghostbusters because
No.
now genre blending is the norm.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as these rigidly defined Bill Murray comedies and kids comedies and animated comedies. Everything is the same. Everything is blended. Everything is every
I
genre.
I wouldn't say it's as desperate as all that. I wouldn't say everything is exactly the same, but I
No. You're
agree
right.
that
Everything is the
you
same in that
know,
everything is able to bleed into everything else without someone going, "What is this? Is this Ghostbusters?" That's what I'm
right.
saying.
Yes, yes, for sure. That there are fewer and fewer movies that are genres unto themselves.
Right. Take for example Ghostbusters 2016,
Hmm.
which is a reboot. Reboot is its own genre.
Right.
It has its own conventions. It's
Hmm.
being self-referential, being having cameos, having jokes about how corporate everything is, and
Hmm.
being really big about like focusing on the new cast and how
Right.
great everything gels. So like Ghostbusters 2016 has more in common with Space Jam: A New Legacy even than I think Ghostbusters 1 had with Space Jam.
Oh, absolutely. I 100%
So
agree.
isn't that kind of a thing that shows the changing of the times in terms of
Yeah.
genre?
Totally. I agree. And I think, this one would be hard to classify as like a sports movie almost, you know? Like, tell
Right.
me if I'm wrong
It's
there,
like a
but
video
it
game
doesn't.
movie.
Right, which is, I guess, a new version of sports movies in the modern
Sure.
era.
And it's also kind of like a superhero movie. You
Yeah,
know, you put together
it
a team and they
seems
fight a big bad.
it seems so informed by superhero movies
Yeah.
more so than
Team up,
anything else.
end
Yeah.
game, these kind of things.
The team up, the crossover, the reboot. That is kind of the space in which
Right.
this new
And those
movie
are
lives.
necessarily crossovers, I would say. A team
Right.
up where you're using properties from different universes, different in the serververse, different,
Hmm.
planets. You're necessarily going to be crossing genre lines. But back in the
Right. Like,
90s, it wasn't so simple. You had to pitch it
exactly.
as this is like Ghostbusters, which it wasn't.
It
If I'm not
wasn't at
being
all.
clear, Space Jam is not like Ghostbusters.
It's so interesting because, like movies like I feel like a new legacy happen not all the time now, but like they're
Ah,
so much more common,
yeah,
or, episodes of a TV show that do this are so common. Whereas like these crossovers didn't exist that much before. Like we did a whole episode on crossovers and how much more prevalent they have become.
right.
And I think we did that like 2 years ago now,
Yeah. Now
if not
it's
longer.
way more
And
true.
it's even
Godzilla versus
more
King Kong is
true.
one of the biggest HBO Max properties and Warner Brothers properties in general,
Hmm.
Warner Media properties in general.
Oh
It's
yeah.
yeah, it's huge.
I mean, it's
And a King Kong
just,
versus Godzilla came out in what was it,
and
1970 something, and it meant nothing. It was not a big hit. It was not
right.
something
But
that
I think
shaped.
I think what's interesting is that the sort of consolidation of who owns the rights to these characters
Yeah,
has made it much simpler for movies like these to be greenlit, and the concern with making sure that there's money being made back and like wringing as much as you can out of old properties before they, become public domain or whatnot. um, that is the concern, and that
right,
is the goal, and so that is why we are just going to see more and more and more and more of these
right.
until like there's nothing
And
left.
to return all the way back to our first point about the technical changes, the technology
Yeah.
changing, all of these things can look aesthetically matching because
Hmm.
of CGI, where, like, yes, in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you had all these different properties from different animators from Disney and from Warner Brothers interacting,
Hmm.
and with this new fictional, Roger Rabbit studio that they made
Verse.
up.
Yeah.
So like you can have all those interact because they're all cartoons. But what
Right.
if you create an aesthetic where CGI and humans are natural to interact with each other? Then you can cross
Hmm.
over anything.
Hmm.
And it's totally easy and it's all part of the pipeline. You just outsource it
Yeah.
to some Canadian VFX company and say,
Right.
make me a Fred Flintstone. I'm gonna put him in the Space Jam. And then he's
Yep.
there.
Then he's
There's
there.
no muss, no fuss. You
Make
don't
me
have
an
to get a
Agent
guy
Smith.
who used to work on the Flintstones back in 1960, who's now like unemployed and just sits around all day smoking cigarettes. Um, that's a
What is
story I
this?
made up. But you know, anyone can make anything in the aesthetic of
Right.
Hollywood, and
Right.
anything can interact with anything else. Yosemite Sam can be in Casablanca. Doesn't fucking
Right.
matter.
Yep. 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 It's interesting. I hope
Yeah,
someone can do something creative and fascinating with it and not boring
right.
and corporate, but
Right.
my
But the
hopes are
thing is, I
slim.
think even the things that are inventive and are creative in this movie, which there are
Hmm.
some, they get absorbed into the aesthetic of the reboot crossover adventure movie, superhero movie, cross
Family
promotional
comedy.
object, family
Right.
comedy, whatever that is. I just, yeah, I think it's an interesting artifact. I'm glad that we talked for so long about it.
Yeah.
But I personally have have nothing else to say at the moment. But I'm sure that our listeners at home, we said a lot of crazy hot takes that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. And I've seen some crazy hot takes about Space Jam. I've seen Jack Saint's video. Have you seen that one?
Oh, I have not watched it yet.
That's something to
Exciting.
check out after this. It's wild.
Okay. As his
And
videos usually are.
yeah. And there are plenty of other hot takes about the first Space Jam, the second Space Jam, Looney Tunes back in action. There are people who defend that movie. There are a lot of hot takes out there about the Looney Tunes, but I don't think I've heard any of our hot takes out there.
No,
So
they're
if you
hot
have a
off
take on one
the
of our
griddle.
hot takes, please tweet at us at Talking Tropes, and I will angrily respond to anything that you say that disagrees with me.
Yeah, well, that's all, folks. Bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.